Should Washington arm Ukraine? It's a debate that has rumbled on since the beginning of the year. So far, the US has sent military instructors and equipment across the Atlantic, but the White House has stopped short of sending lethal weapons. Now, joining us in the Ukraine Today studio today is Mykola Vorobiov. He is a Ukrainian blogger, journalist, and also the director of the Washington-based Center for Eastern European Perspectives. Mykola, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me here. Thank you.
So let's start talking about this US support for Ukraine. Do you think the US is giving enough support for Ukraine?
Well, I'm sure that they could have, the administration, the White House, they could have done much more for Ukraine, equipment, sending lethal and non-lethal equipment. But for sure, from my perspectives, like talking to many congressmen and scholars, journalists in Washington, it's obvious that we won't receive any lethal assistance during the Obama's administration. So we have to hope on the next administration. Probably they will be, he or she will be Republican, or even Democrats, so probably we will gain more benefits from this.
Mm-hmm. And in the States, the Ukrainian diaspora make up less than 1% of the population. I think it's about 0.33%. So in your view, why do you think US taxpayers' money should be spent to arm Ukrainian forces in eastern Ukraine? I mean, the US and Ukraine is quite far from each other.
Yeah, it's a good question, actually, but I'm sure that firstly, it's the threat not only for Ukraine, but for whole European Union and Western civilization. Firstly, for the last 70 years, the land was grabbed by military force since World War II, and now we are on the verge of second Cold War, which everybody realizes, and nobody wants just to escalate this. So it's the United States' interest, it's interest of Ukrainian people just to defend themselves. And Ukrainians, as well as Ukrainian government, Ukrainian president, they must do much more to get this support. But actually, it's not the main issue, at least among all demands among our government. There was a big delegation here before the Minsk II memorandum in February. And our militaries, they didn't ask for the lethal assistance for the first. First, it was anti-battery radars, because most of our casualties comes from the artillery shelling from that side. So first is anti-battery radars. The second is drones. It's very important for us to detect their artillery, to determine where they are located. Third, it was medicine, and only fourth, it was some defensive, javelins, some armory, and etc. But first, it was non-lethal requirement for the United States. And also I want to remind about Freedom Ukraine Support Act, signed by the Obama administration, but him personally, and supported anonymously in December last year, which authorized the president to provide us lethal assistance. So we need to conduct more pressure on Washington and play on the field for those who maybe even they are opponent of Obama administration, maybe Republicans, maybe Senator McCain. They're very helpful, and they very demand administration to provide lethal assistance for Ukraine. So we have to pay more attention working with them.
Mm-hmm. And with all this support now from America, at the same time as this support, you have the European Union leaders, the powerhouses like France and Germany, who, according to some political analysts, have tried to make concessions with Russia for the militants in eastern Ukraine, for example, giving more autonomy to those regions that have been taken over. Do you think there's a conflict of interest between Europe and America about their policy towards Ukraine?
I would say that Russians, for now, and what Kremlin does not realize for sure, they do everything to split the first the European Union and the United States, and then to split the European Union entirely over Ukrainian issues. So, but they still stick together. They tried to do this via propaganda and other sort of tricks, but it was miserable because the main things which it based on is ideology. So the West, the European Union and Ukrainians and the United States, they share the same ideology and the same values. which say that like people deserve to be free and you can't just grab somebody's land and so on. So I think that yes, for sure, the United States, they make some pressure, especially on German Chancellor Angela Merkel, to do more for Ukraine, because firstly it's a threat for European Union, not only for Ukrainians, and these tanks could be like tomorrow in some country of Baltic country, Latvia or Lithuania. That's why. So it's a threat for European Union and for their integrity, and at least they have to increase the expenditures for their defense. As we know, for now, according to the NATO standards, it should be at least 5% of the GDP. Now,
2%. I think it's about 2%, isn't it? But I know there's only a few countries that actually make that 2%, maybe 5 or 6.
That's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem. They can't accomplish even the minimum. Even like probably it was only 1.5% in Germany, so they could only, and it was the highest ranking. But yes, still, so like Europeans have to help Ukraine to to defend itself, to defend Ukraine, and to defend their unity and their integrity. That's why.
But do you think without this American pressure, then the European Union leaders would have maybe given more concessions to the Kremlin?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And even like Minsk memorandum, and some, for example, some famous American diplomat, his name is Kurt Walker. In his recent interview, he said that it was a deal over splitting Ukraine, just to split Ukraine, the Minsk memorandum. So, like many like intellectuals, even in Washington, they realized that it's not that good for Ukraine, either first and the second Minsk memorandum. But still, Europeans, we have to be aware that they still need Russia. They still need Russian gas and oil, and they very connected to Russian business, and so this is like historical ties, if you want.
Moving on to Ukraine and how the country can promote itself outside of its own borders, what do you think Ukraine can do to promote itself in the US? Can it do more, maybe through NGOs or countering Russian propaganda, that sort of stuff?
Tom, firstly, I appreciate what you are doing here, because I think that this is the main platform of the information here. I mean, your source, Ukrainian Today, is really great, and I would say that a lot of people, even foreigners and other places, they really do care, they monitor it, because there is not many alternative. And favor to what you are doing, for example, one number. So basically, probably you know about Russia Today, and this is really powerful. And I used to interview one of the former employees. Her name is Liz Wall. She was on the air, and she just said that I don't want to work here, etc. So it was like they gained probably 2 million of views this video. So she left her job there. But meanwhile, basically, from the Ukrainian government, we have only one journalist who covers the United States for now. And we can see that the propaganda is very overwhelming right now. And there are different fronts where we should fight. Firstly, let's say this is propaganda, like what people think about the developments here in Ukraine. And Russian propaganda, they're very successful, because in any even small hotel you can find their channel. Unofficially, their budget is $500 million, and they have 4 bureaus in Miami, Washington, LA, and New York. So it's very strong. But on the other hand, we have to realize that the West is already on our side. So all they need, I think, in Congress, because it's more like specific work. Let's say if diaspora, they do some rallies, they raise money for wounded soldiers, they try to attract attention of the whole people of the United States. In our case, I think that we have divided more attention to the work in Congress, to work on the bills, to lobby for Ukraine. And that's what our diplomats, Ukrainian diplomats, have to do, like Israeli does, like Turkish, Georgians, and everybody, in think tanks, in Congress, in small NGOs, whenever. So people who make decisions, and they have to receive this not only advice is what we really need, but also like reliable and fresh information.
So it's partly up to the Ukrainian government also to put the effort in and
first of all,
reach
yes,
out.
Yes, it's up to our ambassador for sure, and for the staff of the embassy.
Mykola, thank you very much for coming in. That was Mykola Vorobiov, Ukrainian journalist and blogger. Now back to the news.